Hey everybody, this is Andy Ternay. I am coming back to you today with another video in my series on modern day Vikings. Well, a small percentage of them, most of them being decent people, and a link between this small percentage and racists and racism today. This video is another one on early defining of the category of race. I want to talk about how this conception entered the modern mind that race was a biological construct. And what I'm going to discuss very briefly is the person who systematized race as a way of breaking down different human beings. And this guy is very famous. He was a botanist who had an incredibly OCD passion for categorizing and organizing organisms. His name was Carolus Linnaeus, and he lived in the 1700s, 1708 to 1788, I believe. I may have to put an annotation on the screen to correct that. Carolus Linnaeus, as a botanist, had encountered the concept of humans being classified by race. It had already been published by a Frenchman named François Bernier, and Bernier's work was well known in Europe during Linnaeus's time. Linnaeus came from a very different perspective. He, as I mentioned, was a botanist. He did his field work in Finland, and he traveled around Northern Europe, either studying or giving talks, but he didn't ever leave Europe, as far as I've been able to tell. And Linnaeus was writing about botany at a time when science classified organisms very, very differently. And a couple of examples which I think are pretty clear are turtles and tortoises were classified as being the same type of organism as armadillos. And the reason they were classified this way is because they all had shells. Now, no one seemed to consider the fact that turtles and tortoises lay eggs while armadillos were placentals and gave live birth. Also, another example would be the flying fish was considered a type of bird in its day. This seemed to Linnaeus to not make a lot of logical sense. So Linnaeus is the man who invented taxonomy. And that's the field where we break things down by similarities. And of course, in modern times, we look at genetic similarities more than we do physical similarities. Not having access to genetics, Linnaeus did the best he could with what he had. And so when he got to human beings, he would look at us and he would say, well, we're animals, so we fall under the kingdom Animalia. We're not bacteria, and we are not fungi, and we are not plants. We're animals. And then he'd look a little closer at us and he'd say, okay, so we're chordates, we have a spinal column, and beyond that we have hard bones, so we're vertebrates. We have this fuzzy stuff all over us, so we're mammals. And then he went down and down and down until he got to the last two, which are genus and species. And he said we are Homo sapiens, the thinking man. Now, one thing he did do is he stuck us in with the primates. And in his day and age, that caused quite a furor because people thought we were fundamentally different from apes and monkeys. And Linnaeus did not. This is a controversy, as you're aware of, that in my home state of Texas is not yet settled, sadly. I'm deadly embarrassed by this. But anyway, humans or primates were Homo sapiens, and that's where he stopped with all the other things he classified, whether plants or fungus or animals. He didn't go any further, but with humans he went one step further, and he added a category of race. And in Linnaeus's eye, there were, let's see here, I believe it's 4 human races. Yep, 4 human races was how he saw the world, with a 5th category just kind of tacked on. How did Linnaeus learn about other types of humans, other, in his terminology, races of humans? I said he never left Europe. It's not clear he ever even spoke to anyone of Asian, African, or other descent. Probably Linnaeus got his information from early scientific explorers, missionaries who were traveling to various parts of the world to carry the news of Christianity to various people. Traders would have been a huge part of his information sources, and colonists probably would have been another source. So we have colonists who may have been in conflict with local populations and not necessarily had a great view of them. We have traders who may have actually sold other human beings for profit and who had a vested business interest in portraying them as subhuman. We have missionaries who often seem to characterize people who of other belief systems as inferior. So you start to get this sense of where Linnaeus got his information. Now let's have a look at how he broke down humans. The first category he came up with is Europaeus albus, which was the white European. Now he described white Europeans as white, serious, strong, hair flowing, blonde, eyes blue, active, very smart, inventive, covered by tight clothing, and ruled by law. I'm not going to give you that much detail on the other categories. I'm going to give you one more just so that you can see the contrast. Americanus rubescens. This was the Native Americans. He described them as red, ill-tempered, subjugated, hair straight, black, thick, nostrils wide, face harsh, beard scanty, obstinate, contented, free, paints himself with fine red lines, ruled by custom. It's already clear he sees the red American, his terminology, as below the white European. It doesn't get any better, and I'm not going to read it to you because, frankly, it's offensive nowadays. But the other categories were Asiatus fuscus, which was the brown Asian, and in later editions he amended that to Asiaticus luridus, the yellow Asian. Africanus niger, the black African. And then, after these 4 categories, he had this: Homo sapiens monsterosus, a catch-all for wild and monstrous humans, unknown groups, and more or less abnormal people. I don't know if I fall into more or into less, but I'm not comfortable with that category at all. The problem is Linnaeus did science a huge service by inventing taxonomy, which is for the most part an accurate and commonsensical way to look at differences in biology. But when it came to humans, he went a step too far. He created a whole new category for us, which really he didn't have a good basis to do. He may have thought he did, but we have better tools and know that he did not. And on top of that, his views were so authoritative that they propagated throughout textbooks and the scientific field in Europe of his day, and then into the next century, and into the next century. And many of our views about race today can go straight back to those original 4 categories of humans described erroneously by Linnaeus. I'm going to finish here. I'm going to ask you to please subscribe to my videos if you're finding them interesting. I would love it if you would visit my Patreon page. The link will be in the comments below. And if you support what I'm trying to do, hey, I would appreciate you kicking in a couple bucks. Helps pay the mortgage, helps pay for textbooks and access to scientific articles. Other than that, I'm going to wish you a pleasant day. Talk to you soon.